Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, especially if she is scorned by a vampire film. In 1921, an extremely small German film studio named Prana Film decided to create a Dracula film without the permission of Florence Stoker, the widow of the late Bram Stoker, the author and creator of Dracula. She was successful in bankrupting and killing the studio, but like all vampires, this one was much harder to kill. Thanks to the saving of copies of the film, despite orders to destroy all of them, the world was given one of the most terrifying vampires of all time, Count Orlok. This is his story. I'm the man shouting the macabre, Bryan Peters, and you've encountered something gravely amusing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gravely Amusing, the only horror podcast that hopes you took a dump right before the ball dropped so you didn't have to carry that crap into 2025. I know I did. Last week, oddly on Christmas, the ever so creative filmmaker Robert Eggers released his version of the classic film and story of Count Orlok. I did see the film, and I do have thoughts and opinions on that I will share in a bit. But when I came out of the film with my boyfriend, my pal Tyler, and his wife Junia, I was asked what I thought by the young manager Abraham Van Helsing of our local theater. And his name is not really Van Helsing, but it should be. It really should. but Abe asked me what I thought, and I gave my unspoiler thoughts, and Abe revealed to me that he had never seen the 1922 version of this film or any version, that remake that came after. And what shocked me more is he said he never saw Bela Lugosi's Dracula. And this ripped my heart right out of my asshole. Not only is that film not only is the silent film, the 20s, one of the most influential films of all time and probably most important films, but Bela Lugosi's Dracula, I mean, for gosh sakes, I mean, it's like often considered the definitive Dracula. And to not see these movies and manage a movie theater, for gosh sakes, like, I think that has to be a cardinal sin. But what I've found as I push 40 years old is that a lot of kids these days have never seen the old stuff. And I know that the original Nosferatu is over 100 years old now, like it's 102 years old. But gosh, like, to say you never saw Bela Lugosi's Dracula is like saying you never had ice cream. To me, it's an abomination of God, which is a good segue to the point of my episode today, which is Count Orlok, nicknamed the Bird of Death. Some would say he is the Timu Dracula, the Dracula ordered from Wish. Or some would say he's a better version of Dracula. I'll let you be the judge. So let's put away the Ouija board, get out what's left of your charcuterie board and your liquor or your sodies from New Year's Eve, send those kids to bed, or if you're driving, yell at them to shut up and politely ask your spouse to let you listen to a podcast and let you listen to the story of Count Orlok and Nosferatu. Our story begins in ancient Transylvania. Well, actually, no. I mean, yes, it does, but actually, no. The story of Orlok's creation actually begins in World War One. So one of the founders and producers at Prana Film, Albin Grohl, was a German artist, architect, production designer, set designer, costume designer, and occultist. He was a lifelong student of the cult and was a member of Fraternitas Saturni, which is a bunch of dudes that buy Saturn cars. Actually, it's not. But, honestly, do they even make Saturn cars anymore? I can't remember the last time I saw a Saturn commercial or a Saturn vehicle. Maybe Saturn's got discontinued. Anyway, the Fraternitas Saturni is basically almost Scientology, and he was a member of this occult group under the magical name of Master Passituius. So what the heck is Fraternitas Saturni? I knew you would ask. So it is a brotherhood of Saturn, a German magical order that was founded in 1926 by Eugene Krosch, also known as Gregor Gregorius. Because, why not change your name to something just Gregorius? And it was founded by him and 4 other dudes. And I could not find a whole lot on our boy Gregorino, other than he was arrested by Nazis and wrote lots of magical stuff, or magical books and stuff. And what's interesting is the Nazis were into the occult. So for him to be arrested by the Nazis, it'd be interesting to know why. But the Brotherhood of Saturn was founded during a conference in 1925 called the Wida Conference, where basically all these magical orders and such of German time and German folklore came together to kind of bring all of them together and to consolidate the teachings of Aleister Crowley, who claimed to be a world teacher and head of some other order. Crowley is one of the most famous occult magicians of all time, and he had a belief that was called like Themilia, I think it was called. And his belief basically summed up to the phrase of "do what thou wilt." So basically they believed, and they wrote a book of law based on that do what you want as long as you don't hurt people. Whatever. I mean, yeah, like don't hurt anybody. So he was kind of the father of secret societies and Templars and Freemasons. And I can go into all that stuff, but it's just a lot. Just think Freemasons, secret societies, Scientology type stuff. All you really need to know is some dudes played in the first game of Magic the Gathering, and one of them, named Alvin Grew, made Count Orlok and Nosferatu. Now back to Ollie with the weather. But Alvin claims that he got the idea to make a vampire film while serving in the German army in World War One. He claimed that he met a Serbian farmer that told him that his father was a vampire and one of the undead living in Romania, which is modern-day Transylvania. He further claims that the father called his vampiric father Nosferatu, which is a Romanian word for vampire, supposedly. The word translates to the insufferable one or the offensive one. It doesn't necessarily translate to undead, but the word sounds awesome. I mean, Nosferatu, it sounds awesome. So this word was used in other inspiration and definitely used in, the only 100% true inspiration for Nosferatu, which is Bram Stoker's Dracula novel. Now, Stoker said his source for the work, or his source for the word, came from an 1885 publication written by British author Emily Gerard, an article that she wrote titled Transylvanian Superstitions. And this is an article that I definitely need to find, but I found little parts of it. Emily wrote, more decidedly evil, however, is the vampire, or Nosferatu, in which every Romanian peasant believes as firmly as he does in heaven or hell. There are two sorts of vampires, living and dead. The living vampire is in general the illegitimate offspring of two illegitimate people, but even a flawless pedigree will not insure anyone against the intrusion of a vampire into his family vault, since every person killed by a Nosferatu becomes likewise a vampire after death, and will continue to suck the blood of other innocent people till the offspring or till the spirit has been exorcised, either by opening the grave of the person suspected and driving a stake through the corpse, or firing a pistol shot into the coffin. In very obstinate cases, it is further recommended to cut off the head and replace in the coffin with a mouth filled with garlic, or to extract the heart and burn it, strewing the ashes over the grave. This, of course, is still a part of vampire lore today. Please don't forget to listen to my Dracula episodes in season 1 for more info on Dracula and the Bram Stoker novel and other things that came with that. So this is where Bram Stoker says that he got the word Nosferatu. But the word was actually first published in 1865 in a German article by Wilhelm Schmidt. And that's Schmidt, not Smith Day. Schmidt's article discusses Transylvania customs, and it appeared in Austro-Hungarian in an Austro-Hungarian magazine, where Gerard could have encountered as a reviewer of this, of German literature, like living in Austria-Hungary, whatever. Schmidt does not identify the language explicitly, but he puts the word Nosferatu in like a typeface, which indicates that it's a language other than German. But Schmidt's description does identify Nosferatu as a Vampyr, spelled Vampyr. And he writes something similar to what Emily wrote, but he writes, "At this point, I come to the vampire, Nosferatu. It is this, the illegitimate offspring of two illegitimately begotten people, or the unfortunate spirit of one killed by a vampire, who can appear in the form of dog, cat, toad, frog, louse, flea, bug, in any form, in short, and plays his evil tricks on newly engaged couples." Interesting. Like John and Mina Harker. And plays evil tricks on newly engaged couples as incubus or succubus, zaporatorial by name, just like the old Slavonic or Bohemian Bilkodak, Zokodak, or Polish Mora and Russian Kikimora. That which was believed about this and used as a defense more than 100 years ago is still true today. And there can hardly dare to be a village which would not be in a position to present a personal experience, or at least hearsay, with firm conviction of the veracity. So it's just not clear if the word is German or Transylvanian, but that's kind of where it came from. So Gro started drawing his version of what a vampire should be. And he would take his inspiration from Dracula and the German Gothic novel and film, The Golem, and inspiration from alchemic and occult symbols. And he would weave actually those symbols into costumes and set pieces. And in the language, his vampire would write, and what would be in the letters between Orlok and Nock, the Renfield-like character of the story. Grohl would hire a screenwriter, Henry Gallen, who also wrote the screenplay for the Golem film, to write the screenplay for Nosferatu. Now, the filmmakers state that they contacted the publishing house that had released a German translation of Dracula, but they never reached out to Florence Stoker, Bram Stoker's widow, to secure the rights, as I said earlier. So when it came to writing this script for Nosferatu, Grau and screenwriter Henrik Gallen ended up creating a Dracula ripoff with, a few differences in an attempt to not get sued. Now, And of course, what's funny is, like I just said, Florence Stoker would go after them like a Karen asking for a manager. So even though they made these changes, what's also funny is even though they made all these changes to names, they still put in the title cards and the infertile of the film that it's inspired by Dracula. So they're morons. And right after this movie was made, the studio would go bankrupt and never get to make any creepy occult films like they had planned to. So, what were these changes that they thought would save them from a lawsuit? Well, it's these changes that create a whole new vampire in legacy, Count Orlok. And sometimes I like Orlok, well, at least the name of Orlok, more than I like the name Dracula. It's just, I don't know, it just sounds cool. The actor Conrad Veidt, Conrad Veidt was actually originally supposed to play Orlok. Now, fans of Gravely Amusing and fans of the Joker know Conrad as the actor who played Gwynplaine in The Man Who Laughs, and actually was an inspiration for the Joker, the Batman villain. And this is kind of funny because lately Bill Skarsgård, the man who last played Orlok, wants to play the Joker in the DCU now. And I'm kind of against it because I feel like Bill Skarsgård has been shoved down my throat a lot lately. I know he's just been in a lot. And I'm just, now, when it comes to a kind of core character, we just like played by Bill Skarsgård. Skarsgård. I don't know. I think Skarsgård's kind of losing his touch, but that's neither here nor there. I'm actually for David Howard Thornton, I believe his name is. He plays Art the Clown in the Terrifier movies, to actually be the new Joker. And I think you should YouTube his Joker monologue that he did at a Comic-Con recently. I think you'll be sold too. He plays a very Mark Hamill Joker, so it's something special. So speaking of actors, so back to Conrad. So Conrad was replaced by Max Schreck because Conrad has some scheduling conflicts with some movies. So if the name Max Schreck sounds familiar, Tim Burton would actually name Christopher Walken's evil businessman character in Batman Returns the name Max Schreck. So, wow. Tim Burton, you want to name my character after a famous actor who played Dracula? What an honor. Wow. And that's my Christopher Walken impersonation, and I expect an Oscar in the mail. Max had played some horror characters, like he played a freak show landlord in a movie called Drums in the Night. And he was just like an unknown German actor. He was just trying to make a name for himself. And there is a theory that he was actually a vampire himself by his odd behavior, his kind of character acting, and seclusion. This would actually be translated into the 2000 film Shadow of the Vampire, starring John Malkovich as director of Nosferatu, Frederick Murnau, and Willem Dafoe as Max Schreck playing Count Orlok. So that movie is really good. I love it. I suggest you watch it. It basically tells the story of making the movie Nosferatu as if Max Schreck was a vampire himself. And the director made a deal with this actual vampire to, you be in my movie, you make me money, and I'll, feed you victims. It's a pretty darn cool movie. I highly recommend it. And Willem Dafoe playing Max Schreck would actually be nominated for Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal in that. And he would later play the Van Helsing character in the 2024 adaptation of Nosferatu that just came out. So, yeah. So in this movie, Nosferatu, some of the basic things of the Dracula story kind of stay the same, though. So in the movie, a real estate agent travels to Transylvania to finalize the sale of a house to a count. And through staying with the count, he suspects that the count is a vampire. And he's imprisoned by the count, and as the count makes his way to the new house he bought, he brings death, he pursues a new food source, and the real estate agent and his friends and family try to stop. So basically kind of the same stuff. So in this movie, in the original silent movie, now it's kind of rough to watch because there's no sound. It's 102 years old, so kind of like give it a break. But what I do like about this original movie is, while the Jonathan Harker character, this Thomas Hutter character, is in like an inn waiting to be taken to the Borgo Pass to go see Orlok, he finds this book I think it's like the Book of Vampires or the Book of Bilal or something, and the book is like just kind of put in his room. Who puts it in there, why it's in there, we don't know. We don't even know who wrote the book. And in the 2024 movie, I was hoping that we would see this book again. I was hoping that we would find something about the author that, and this book kind of works as like leading the narrative in this silent film of like what a vampire is and what it can do and how to kind of defeat this vampire. And I really like that book aspect in it and part of the plot. But I don't think we never see that book in any other adaptations. But here, I just really like it. And also in this one, Dracula or Orlok, he's more rat like in appearance. He's scarier. Like he's more like a creature that succumbed to the evil and to the animalistic qualities of what a vampire is. And I kind of like that contrast and in terms of Orlok and Dracula, like how they're different. And I'm going to go into now how these changes are, what these changes are. So the story of Nosferatu, of course, is similar, as I said, but these are the changes to the characters. So Mina and Jonathan Harker Jonathan Harker being the real estate agent, Mina being his newlywed wife, they're renamed Ellen and Thomas Hutter. And Ellen occasionally sleepwalks in the movie instead of Lucy, who was Mina's friend and Dracula's first victim in the story as he comes to Britain. And we know, of course, that Count Dracula is renamed Count Orlok. This Nosferatu takes out many of the secondary characters, such as Quincy Morris, and changes the names and roles of those who remain. So Van Helsing is renamed into Dr. Bulwer in reference to an English occult novelist, Edward Bulwer Lytton. So many occult references and occult things in this. So this is where things get cool, though, in my opinion, is the differences in how Orlok and Dracula were created and not only and their appearance. So Orlok is believed So Orlok kind of has like two different origins. I kind of well, he kind of has two different origins, but he there's one that's mostly used. So it's believed to have he's believed to have been created by Belial, who is a lieutenant demon of Satan, while Count Dracula is believed to have been a former warlord who's killed in battle and returns as a vampire. So Dracula is a warlord, heavy Vlad Tempest, base, and implying who that is, that he's Vlad Tempest, but he was killed in battle and returns as a vampire. So Orlok's linked to Belial is significant because Belial is one of the demons traditionally summoned by Goetic magicians, which are European sorcerers or witches. So Orlok's link to the demon Belial ties into that occultness and that European folklore and sorcery and witches and all that stuff. And the most common origin of Orlok is that he wasn't just created by Belial, which I kind of like that. I kind of like that he's a creature created by the demon, but he's mostly portrayed as he was someone who practiced dark sorcery, like a dark magician, and Belial was his master, and Belial turns him into a vampire. So the novel Dracula says that Dracula descended from a lineage related to making pacts with the devil, and this his ancestors trained him in alchemy and the occult works. So I kind of like the connection to Belial as a way for Orlok. I like being a magician who kind of becomes eternal life, becomes a vampire. I like that. Yeah, but I also like that he could be a demon soldier created by Belial. Like he strictly is a demon. He really is a demon, and there never was a human side. It's just strictly demon. I kind of like that more for Orlok's character. And kind of Dracula in general. Like I don't like any human side of Dracula, to be honest. But that's just me. I like that separation from just being like a demon or separation from Vlad Tempest. I just like that. So I also like that Orlok looks extremely inhuman and corpse-like. The difference in between Orlok and Dracula is Orlok has sunken eyes. He has sharp talons, long fingers, long fingernails. He has hunched shoulders. He's very thin. He's bald. He has pointed ears. He almost looks like a vermin, like a rat. And which makes this more interesting because he brings pestilence and plague to London or Germany or sorry. And like he's like the father of rats. Like he's a rat himself, he'll gnaw at you, or he'll train 4 turtles in the sewers of Germany and ninja ways, anything like that. Orlok is aggressive and blood sucking like Dracula, but in a different way. So, for instance, when Jonathan Harker cuts himself while shaving in the Dracula novel, Dracula lunges toward him, and then he draws back when he sees the crucifix on Jonathan Harker. And then Dracula smashes the mirror because he doesn't like to see his reflection. He doesn't like to see the crucifix. He has that anger. But in Nosferatu, when they have Hutter cut his thumb, which actually in the 1931 movie, Renfield cuts his thumb, and in Nosferatu, Orlok instantly jumps on him and sucks the blood out of his thumb. And so Dracula kind of is trying to hide his animalistic parts Whereas Orlok, it's like, I'm already an animal. I'm just gonna get for it. Another contrast to Count Dracula is Orlok cannot create other vampires. He doesn't create other vampires, and he kills his victims, which causes the townsfolk to blame the plague in the city. So I kind of would have liked, and especially in this 2024 version, more of Orlok kind of being in the city with the plague going on, because everybody thinks it's a plague that he brought, and he didn't bring a plague, but he can cover up his vampiric attacks of people with this plague. So I just would have liked more of him having victims and kind of going with that. Also, Orlok differs from Dracula in other ways through the use of Dracula casts no shadow. Dracula has no reflection. Orlok's shadow is even more terrifying than Orlok in some cases. The 2024 version has this visual of Orlok's shadow in his hand stretching over the city. And that's an awesome visual. And Orlok's shadow is manipulated so much in this movie. And in the original one, there's these iconic scenes of Max Schreck going up the stairs and casting his shadow, and we see like his rat like body and his talon and his his claws, and gosh, it's just an iconic image. It's scary. It looks awesome. Yes. So, and also a difference is Dracula in the book, and this is where we mess up in the lore of Dracula. Dracula is most powerful at night, but he can walk around in the daytime. Now, I personally like the change of sunlight hurting Dracula. I kind of like that. But then again, I can like, because Dracula is more human in appearance, I guess it makes sense for him to be able to work in sunlight and just have less power, kind of like in the book. But in this movie, sunlight is fatal to Orlok. He cannot walk around in it. Orlok must sleep in the day because sunlight's going to kill him. And Dracula's only weakened by sunlight. So, as noted by Alan Silver and James Arsuni in the Vampire Town, one very significant addition to the Stoker plot is the vampire's fatal to sunlight. So in the Dracula movie, Dracula can't handle sunlight, but the novelist character, he can't transform. He has weaker powers. But because of Nosferatu's filmmakers, this has kind of been a constant for vampires, that they can't handle sunlight. So you can thank Nosferatu for that. The ending of Nosferatu and the novel Dracula is substantially different because in the book Dracula, the whole team kind of has this big battle near the Borgo Pass, and they all like collectively kill Dracula. Jonathan Harker cuts his head off with this blade. We go all through that stuff. But in Nosferatu, it's Ellen, the Thomas and that Jonathan Harker character's wife, that sacrifices herself to kind of trick him to staying longer and feeding off of her to die by hitting the sunlight. So Nosferatu is the first film ever to establish a vampire dying from exposure to sunlight. So there you go. Nosferatu premiered on March 4th, 1922, which is probably around the time where this movie Nosferatu, this 2024 version, should have came out. But, you want to release on Christmas, whatever. But it premiered in March 4th, 1922 in Berlin, and it quickly attracted attention. The movie was praised for its visual style and the absolutely terrifying images of Max Schreck as Orlok. And one scene that particularly sticks out to me is when Thomas, the John Harker character, opens his chamber door in the castle. And remember, this movie doesn't have sound. And he opens up the chamber door, and we just see Orlok standing like far away in the shadows and just staring at him through the darkness. And we can see just a little bit of his face and his long fingernails, and he's just staring at him. Terrifying. The film received overwhelmingly positive reviews. And even on Rotten Tomato to this day, the film holds an approval rating of 97%, with the average rating of 9 out of 10. And Rotten Tomatoes basically says, it's one of the silent era's most influential masterpieces. Nosferatu's eerie gothic feel and a chilling performance from Max Schreck as a vampire set the template for horror films that follow. In 1995, the Vatican actually included Nosferatu on a list of 45 important films that people should watch. It was also ranked 21st in Empire Magazine's The 100 Best Films of World Cinema in 2010. In 1997, critic Roger Ebert said that he added Nosferatu to his list of great movies, and he wrote, "Here's the story of Dracula before it was buried alive in cliches, jokes, TV skits, cartoons, and more than 30 other films. The film is in awe of its material and seems to really believe in vampires. Is Murnau's Nosferatu scary in modern sense? Not really. I admire it for its artistry and ideas, its atmosphere and images, than for its ability to manipulate my emotions like a skillful modern horror film. It shows none of the later tricks of the trade, like sudden threats that pop in from the side of the screen, but Nosferatu remains effective. It doesn't scare us. It haunts us." Pretty good review. The studio, Piranha Film, spent more money promoting the movie than making it. So, of course, because of the lawsuit, the studio went bankrupt. And as this movie came out, the news of the vampire film made its way to England and to Bram Stoker's widow, Florence, as I said. So not only is this movie just a blatant ripoff of Dracula, the film's premiere did definitely note that it was adapted from Bram Stoker's Dracula. And yeah, so Florence is, immediately sued, and it became pretty clear that the studio had no money. So after 3 years, a judge in Berlin made their decision that all copies of Nosferatu, the German 1922 film we're talking about, were to be destroyed. But the reason it is still around today, and the reason we have the 2024 version, and all these versions of Count Orlok, the reason that you even have, the Salem's Lot, and because their vampire that Stephen King used was based off Orlok, and Peter, the character in, Who We Are in the Shadows, by the Taka Wakaki version of vampires, that's based on Orlok. And all copies were to be destroyed, but because some of the copies were sent to the United States, and in the United States Dracula was in the public domain, these copies quietly spread and it gained popularity and made it into a cult classic until the copyright fully expired on Dracula in the 1960s, which is where you saw a whole bunch of Christopher Lee movies, and Dracula went crazy in the 60s. And in the 60s, Nosferatu could be shown anywhere. So because of the public domain and because of the changes in the rights to Dracula, in 1979, a remake of Nosferatu would be made, and they simply called it Nosferatu the Vampire. Now, what makes this second version of Nosferatu so darn interesting is it throws away the Count Orlok name. It goes right with Dracula, and it starts changing the motives of Dracula. And I love this version of Dracula. I love this portrayal by Klaus Kinski. I think he looks great. I think they, upped the makeup and the portrayal of Count Orlok in the spirit of Max Schreck. But he plays it so well. And I need to watch it again because I'm forgetting some elements. But 1979, that's the version you need to check out. Nosferatu the Vampire with Klaus Kinski is in this version. They start to make you feel sympathy for Dracula or sympathy for the devil. They show you that he's lonely and he wants to feel love. And Francis Ford Coppola would take this idea and run with it to the hills. And because of this vampire love thought, we get Twilight, we just get all this vampire love and whatever. And I hate it. I particularly hate it. Dracula is evil. Dracula can't feel love. Like he can't feel love. He doesn't care about love. He cares about making more like him, and he cares about domination. Like Dracula is a monster, and when we put in like, the monster is lonely, then it stops making that character evil. It blurs the line of villain and anti-hero and all that other stuff. And just and when we start blurring those lines, like and blurring the lines between evil, monster and villain, this movie blurred the lines of Orlok and Dracula and kind of created that love story thing. I'm not a fan of it. That's just me personally. I'm not a fan of it. If you like Dracula having a love story and stuff, more power to you. You can like what you like. This is like what you like. But the seduction and the sex and that part of vampires and stuff, it's not for the purpose of love. It's the purpose of a power move. It's the purpose of control and evil. So that's just my opinion. So I feel like this 1979 version, the look and the acting chops of Claus and Orlok's is a lot better than the 2024 version. And as is this recording, I did not see the 2023 Doug Jones Nosferatu, but I'm sure it's good. It's Doug Jones. I saw a bit of what his Orlok looks like. He looks great, but I haven't seen it yet. So let's talk the 2024 version. Spoilers coming. A bit of spoilers. I didn't like this. I didn't like this 2024 version. And I know that Robert Eggers is a very creative director, and I know he goes for accuracy in terms of look of things and feel of things, like he did with Witch and he did with Lighthouse, and he's a great writer, and he understands horror, and he understands how things should look and how things should be and what makes things scary. I'm with you. But I didn't like it. It's like it started great with none of the trailers showing what Orlok really looks like. And in And the movie, as it starts, you get the great visual of the castle. The movie starts great, except for the whole, Ellen crap and her calling out the name to Orlok. But I'll get to that in a second. But Nicholas Hoult going to the castle, I would have liked more interaction with him in the hotel. I would have liked him seeing the book of vampires and learning about vampires and Orlok and stuff. I would have liked that. We can get that, but whatever. But I did kind of like the desperation of him to want to make good money and take care of his wife and stuff. Like I kind of like that, but they had the Jonathan Harker character and Nicholas Hoult kind of take a back seat in this movie. They kind of made his motivations a little bit more greed in terms of having the money. Like that was important to Jonathan, but like he really just wanted to kind of just take care of his wife. Just the love story and chemistry between Nicholas Hoult and Lily Depp, whatever, it just wasn't there. I didn't really like it. Just there was no chemistry. I don't know. This movie was kind of a mess, but back to Orlok. I liked how Bill did the voice. Like it's like a rumble, and then it's a wheeze, and it's like the voice of death. And he's like, he talks in different language, but he's like, I will go to London with you. Stuff like that. Like it's I can't mimic it, but it's a really good voice. I loved it. And I loved how that he wasn't in camera focus for a lot until we finally see him. He was kind of in the shadows, like he didn't know what he was looking like. And I kind of almost wish we never saw him in this movie. Like, because when we see him, like, I like that Eggers made him look like a corpse, that he had maggots crawling in his body. I thought that was a good touch. But he gives him a mustache. And I know that, like, noblemen of the time would have a mustache, but like Orlok has been established for 102 years that he doesn't have a mustache and he's bald. He has no hair. They gave him a little bit of like fading hair in this. They gave him a kind of, a specific type of look. And the mustache takes away the rat type appearance. It takes away, kind of his fangs, and it makes him look like freaking Count Robotnik. Like I thought I was watching Sonic 3 and we were getting another ancestor of Ivor Robotnik. He looks freaking silly. Like the mustache makes him look horrible. And while Nicholas Hoult does okay in this movie and the Jonathan Harker like role, the more interesting acting job and character is really Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's like, I mean, I didn't see Craven yet. I will, but I didn't see it yet. But Aaron Taylor Johnson has acting chops, and he proves in this movie with his Arthur Holmwood type character. And if you see the film, you understand, like, his character has weight, has depth, has growth. Like him being a father, like he's the best actor in the movie, in my opinion. And this movie is not horrible. They make the origin of Orlok a magician who's cursed, and that's good. We got good visuals of Orlok's shadow. We get kind of like a very exorcist, like in Orlok's power and control people. But I don't like the story of Ellen or the Mina Harker character calling out as a child for comfort, for a guardian angel, for something. And then she has like psychic ability. And I know that Mina kind of had psychic ability in the novel Dracula, and I know that that's a staple, but like her calling out as a child for comfort, and then this vampire coming and basically probably raping her as a kid, like it makes me comfortable. I don't like it. I don't like that she then has a psychic, bond with Orlok, and we get this kind of love story, and where Orlok, says you're mine, and then she gets married and she kind of tricks her husband into being part of the plot of being taken, by Orlok and the Renfield character, and and big time spoilers here, she defeats him just like in the first movie by letting him feed on her until sun comes up. But in this movie, he basically climbs on top of her. She lets him rape her and feeds on her and just sucks blood out of her boob. And then he rapes her, and then he just finishes, and he's exhausted on top of her, and then sunlight kills him. I hated that more than him killing kids in the movie, which he does on screen. It happens. Like this movie just was bleh. This film had lots of potential, and it does the plague well, but it feels more like Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula remake with some Nosferatu elements. And I don't know what I wanted really. I guess I wanted more stopping this plague and stopping the monster, and more like them all banding together to stop this, and kind of like murders hiding in the plague. Then I want that more than just monster rape. And Lily Rose Depp, she's not a good actress. At least in this, she's not. She's yeah. She had no emotion. Like, I didn't care for her at all. Like, the real question here is, can we get Dracula right again? Can we get Orlok right again? Can we make Dracula good again? And that's going to be the topic of my next episode. So if you liked what I said, or if you didn't, follow me. Subscribe to Gravely Amusing on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you find the podcast. Send me a message. Let me know how you feel. I hope you had a happy new year. I hope this thrilled you. I hope it shocked you. I hope it horrified you. And if nothing else, I hope it left you gravely amused.